Guruve Gaura Chanjaya Radhikaya Tadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadabhaktaya Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vaibhacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Dhanyavad Pranam devotees. So I, by the grace of Guru and Gauranga, have kind of been able to catch up on all of the questions and answers that I had in emails or messages. Many of them because I had spoken about a particular question that was asked in some previous Facebook Live. I did not do a separate Facebook Live again to answer those questions, but I answered those persons directly. Some were follow-up questions to something that had been asked and answered, and there was a follow-up question. And the only question that came in new, which is what I'm doing this morning, was speaking about or asking about. I don't have my phone with me. We've been obviously dealing with the hurricane here, and by grace of Shri Krishna, that it was not very bad in our area, though I certainly offer condolences and well wishes to those who were impacted by the hurricane. I think my wife was telling me earlier, I have not seen the news or anything, that there obviously were some fatalities and obviously some property damage and other sort of things. So we always offer to anyone who has to undergo the trials and tribulations of this material world in some way, form, or fashion, we try to offer our deepest support. Being spiritual doesn't mean being numb to people's reality, and so, or at least what's presented in their package in this material world. And everyone knows that there's, adi-daivic, adi-atmic, and adi-bhautic miseries. So especially those which are adi-daivic, which means it's sort of beyond our control. There are things that happen within the course of nature, are sometimes the most difficult to deal with because there doesn't appear to be any kind of personal recourse a person can take except the prudence to try to prepare. But even then, we are not the controllers, and therefore what happens within the course of nature, in spite of our best plans, can still happen. So, but the question here, just paraphrasing, because like I said, I don't have my phone in front of me, was about persons who come to the path of Bhakti and for some reason or another don't resonate with the path completely, and may take up another modality or may take up another faith process, etc. And they referred me to one tape of an individual who I guess is very popular. I did not know this Prabhu, and I guess he had a relatively large following, or does have a relatively large following, and because he does some other spiritual things. And I don't want to get too much into detail because I don't know the person, and I would never speak to someone's individual and personal karmic unfoldment as far as their spiritual journey is concerned and these sort of things. And in fact, within the course of the question, I had to write back to the person asking about it, that where it came to that point of asking about my personal opinion on that person, I told I don't really have one. I don't know the person in a personal way, and I don't know the history, what they've encountered. I don't know so many things. And of course, again, also, I'm not the judge or have jurisdiction over how people unfold in their spiritual journey, because a spiritual life is a journey and it encompasses many, many factors. So I referred them that if you know this person, then you could reach out to them and inquire from them if they're apt to share, which apparently they were, because they posted a video. So they seemed like they were apt to share, and they seemed like a very nice person. So I recommended you reach out to that person. As far as the discussion of why some people may or may not resonate with Bhakti after having come to the process, there's a myriad of reasons. One being that the Sukriti has not yet reached the level. Sukriti means their pious credits, for lack of a better word. And this is a difficult way to phrase it because obviously some people may think, well, you're saying people who don't come to that point of resonance with Bhakti don't have piety. So that's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying that Bhakti is a very specialized relationship with God. And it is said in all kinds of sastra that it is sudurlabha. Durlabha means something which is rare. Sudurlabha means extremely rare. So the fulfillment of a loving relationship with God is an extremely rare thing. And because it is void of any self-interest, it is part of the reason why it is extremely rare. The nature of every person in the world who is a conditioned soul is that from time without any beginning, they've operated on the platform of self-interest. Whether that self-interest had a dominance of the influence of the mode of ignorance, the mode of passion, or the mode of goodness. And because of that self-interest, it is very difficult to navigate something that requires the exact opposite. Anya abhilasita sunya. To not have any other desire, to be void of any other desire. It doesn't say to be devoid of desires, because there are many people who can take up a path which is void of any desires. That's the entire spectrum of Mayavad and Brahmavad philosophy, where there isn't really anything but the personal self-interest for liberation and freedom from material entanglement and suffering, etc., etc. So those persons can take up with great zeal, only having the desire for that thing. But having only exclusive desire to serve someone else in a personal way is extremely difficult. And it's made more difficult by the fact that we're continuously combating the sort of continual flow of our self-interest. I just was recently in Ypsilanti, Michigan, and I was describing a particular part of our theology, and I mentioned before starting, if everyone can take any vestiges of self-interest they have, and at least for now, put it in your pocket, and then after the Harikatha, you can take it out and then measure it against the nature of the Harikatha, or the nature of discussions on unconditional love, and see where you are at with this self-interest after at least hearing about the nature of unconditional love. Of course, all these devotees that I was speaking to are really kind of very nice devotees and very steeped and very dedicated devotees. So I was saying it more in a generalized sense, because the way those devotees especially seem to be working very dedicated manner to the mission of Mahaprabhu, I don't see much self-interest. So the point being that as long as that self-interest is there, then it is counter to the idea of having anya abhilas, or being anya abhilas sunya, being void of any other desire except the desire to please the object of your worship. So it's obvious that that's something that's very, very rare, just like unconditional love, right? Though it's a popular phrase and it's easily bandied about, unconditional love is not something that is in the purview of conditional life. You cannot produce something unconditional from a conditional space. So the very nature of having unconditional love is first being in a process by which you become unconditioned. And that process, if it's going to be about love, entails the becoming void of self-interest. So it's extremely rare that someone can come to the path of bhakti and they have no self-interest already. That's first thing. Secondly, that a person maybe can easily transition from no self-interest to complete interest only in the pleasure and service of Bhagavan. That's stated in the second part of that verse describing pure bhakti. Anya abhilasita sanyam jnana karma navritam. First, that jnana and karma should not cover pure bhakti. And then secondly, anukulena Krishna anusilanam, bhakti uttam. So uttam bhakti, or uttam love. Uttam means here unconditional love. For God means anukulena Krishna anusilanam. That all endeavors are simply for the anukul of your object of worship. Completely no self-interest. And that's an extremely difficult thing. So, what to speak of the fact that we have not experienced it? If you've been in conditional life from time without beginning, we've not experienced unconditional love. We've experienced semblances of love in the material world. Because love is the foundational basis of the jiva's relationship with Bhagavan, then the constitutional potentiality of that love exists as a sort of gata samskara, it's called, like an impression in the heart. So naturally, when we relate to other people, we produce the semblance, or the abhas, means like a shadow of that in relation to others. But you don't experience in the material world that there's love that is completely unconditional. There are circumstances where it would appear that that love should be like that, like parent and child relationships. Certainly, it would appear like that. But if you really examine any relationship within the material world in a deep way, you'll find that there is some condition which is a deal breaker, for lack of a better word, or a limit under which my love can still be expressed. Now, sometimes people will say, though I love you, I can no longer operate in the mode of love towards you because a certain condition has been broken, right? Whether that's parent and child, whether that's conjugal, whether it's fraternal, right? So, generally speaking, in the material world, you don't find unconditional love. So, for a person to come to the process and not be able to fully even have the ideal that I don't want any self-interest is rare. Even in coming to Bhakti, the Bhagavad Gita says 4 types of people may come. Those people who are in distress, those people who are in want of some kind of material advancement, those people who are inquisitive, and rarely people who are in knowledge about the nature of spiritual life. So, for the predominance of people who come to the process, there was initial interest, whether it had been from a combination of things like previously acquired sukritis, means pious activities done, or whether it was from previous actual bhakti samskars, meaning somebody heard a kirtan, got a book, took prasadam, saw deities, anything. They may have had some previous samskars in bhakti, and they may come and they're in the sort of life-to-life unfoldment in the process. But in many cases, persons may come, they may not have had a lot of either sukriti phal, means pious credits build up, and maybe not very deep bhakti samskars. And so in that case, a person may come, and because of the predominance of self-interest, at a certain point, not especially if they don't come in contact with someone in whom they have the experience of the nature of unconditional love, right? Because sometimes a person may come and they may make relationship with a spiritual mentor, a guru. And in that case, that relationship, which is the first real contact any jiva has with unconditional love, doesn't mature. In other words, either because the person who is performing the function of guru may also have some self-interest. And, of course, getting guru who is pure is one thing. And institutional guruship does not serve that very well, because institutional guruship itself promotes an idea of guruship being institutional, not inspirational, and that could be problematic. So the first person that we have contact with in this world whom we are supposed to experience unconditional love with, we kind of run into the conditions of, well, I don't really have a connection with them because maybe they have thousands and thousands of disciples. Maybe I don't necessarily have a connection with them because we may have disagreements about certain kinds of things which were based on my self-interest and their inability to digest my self-interest according to my perception. So there's many ways in which that relationship, which is supposed to be the contact of unconditional love in this world, doesn't really mature or produce results that would give a person reason to continue down the journey of pure unconditional love. And therefore, they may either revert back or do a continuum in their search for something that they feel resonates with them with carrying their self-interest. So, in terms of the question that was sent to me about that particular person, I looked at a small portion of the video, and like I said, I could never make a commentary on somebody's personal spiritual journey and unfoldment. I don't know the person, and if I was able to sit and talk with them, perhaps things would be more clear as to, and like I said, maybe even if I listened to the entirety of the tape, I would understand more of maybe what happened. But coming from a perspective of a unwavering faith in Bhakti, and knowing Bhakti to be the pinnacle, and of course when we say things like this, we're not speaking disparagingly about other religious processes or other modalities. We're speaking that when comparatively things are put on the table, then you can analyze for yourself what produces the highest degree of love and realization of God. So all of our acharyas have spoken in that way. If you read Jaiva Dharma, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has completely acknowledged other faith processes as being a part of the overall process of Vaishnava Dharma. So it's not like there are many, many religions. There are many stations of faith on the path to pure love of God, right? So having come to that process, which having been revealed by God himself, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as the mode and methodology and modality which gives one that pure love, unconditional love of God, to not find resonance is indicative of perhaps the still having self-interest, which, you know, we also don't condemn people for that. In other words, if a person still has a certain degree of self-interest, which they cannot put, you know, aside in lieu of pursuit of pure unconditional love, so to speak, then that's where the adhikar and the bhakti unfoldment in this life of that person is. And according to Bhagavad Gita, Nahabi Kamanashosti Pratyavayona Vijate, so Alpamapiyasha Dharmasha, that whatever performance of bhakti and the continuum, because a person does not resonate with the fullness of the practice of bhakti, inclusive of its entire theology, study, cultural implications, and everything else, doesn't mean they may not continue to do elements of bhakti. They may have thought, yes, I'll continue to chant Hare Krishna, right? And Namabhas, even Namaparad, will give some sense of sukriti, which will build, right? Of course, it is not the same as chanting Sudanam or even Nam Abhas under the guidance and anugatya of pure sadhus. So we can't make believe they're equal. But it says that person, whatever they've performed in bhakti, is never lost. Don't have this fear. Whatever a person's done in bhakti and continues to do according to where they are in their adhikar, that's permanent as a credit or a deposit in the bank account of going towards pure devotional service. So, but, you know, also answering the question that there is indication that there's something that probably needs examination, perhaps whether it's institutionally or individually or a combination of both, as to why a person may not find resonance in the path of pure bhakti. Because if we say it's just a matter of the relative nature of different paths, then it's bringing bhakti into the arena of things being relative. And of course, bhakti is absolute. So we can't say that it's a matter of, well, this path is just one among many in a relative sense, and I just did not have full resonance with this path, right? In the case of bhakti, it is the totality of processes and modalities towards the ultimate goal of love of God. Now, it may be that, again, because of self-interest, my prominent resonance in life at a particular stage may not be in purely loving God, right? It may, in fact, be a combination of the fulfillment of my self-interest with the religious bent towards understanding and relating to the fact that there is a supreme or divine presence, or something like that. So that's just the reality of what that is. But pure, realized love of the Supreme Person, which is the Godhead, Shri Radha Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? And also, we should not think that this is simply a case of nomenclature, because that same thing could be applied to Allah, Jehovah, etc., because it can. If you understand that Jehovah, Allah, right, etc., are all various nomenclature related to Bhagavan, right? And when you examine things by nomenclature, you just look at what nomenclature gives the biggest picture of the nature of God. So they're not in competition, or they're not in antagonistic stances against each other, right? So every nomenclature related to the divine has a particular definition, and when you really look at it, the practitioners that are operating under the definition of that particular nomenclature view God in a certain way. So in the same way, when we examine the nature of the nomenclature, Krishna, then all of the theological implications that you see around that nomenclature are indicative and also very revealing about the nature of the realization of the soul with God according to that particular nomenclature, right? So of course I'm not speaking strictly in the theology of Bhakti, because in theology of Bhakti, Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, the name itself directly is Krishna, right? So it's not a nomenclature or a title or a description of a quality, activity, or something of Bhagavan. It is a direct manifestation of the reality of Bhagavan, that Bhagavan is all attractive. So if you look at it from that perspective, then if you're worshiping Allah, obviously you have attraction. If you're worshiping Jehovah, it's because you have attraction, right? So every single nomenclature of God, Yahweh, because you have attraction and you picked up a mode of service according to your realization, nature of your faith, nature of what you've understood about God in relation with each other, and that's how you're practicing. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur goes over that in Jaiva Dharma as well, when he talks about various types of faith in relation to Bhagavan, and shows how they're related to Vaishnavism. So I didn't mean to sort of go round and round and round sort of thing, but I could not obviously give a direct answer about that person, because again, I'm reiterating, I don't know them. I don't know where they are in their involvement and so forth. But speaking to the point of not finding resonance with the path of Bhakti, then obviously we have to analyze that if Bhakti is not a relative thing, it is absolute, then we have to look in ourselves as to why we didn't get that resonance. And like I said, there could be many factors, both institutional, personal, a combination of both, and also how much was understood about the process of Bhakti. Because if you don't come to understand what Bhakti is, there could never be a point of having a taste. And without a taste in whatever it is you're doing, the motivation to continue doing that thing will wane and eventually go away. And something else will arise, because wherever you are in your spiritual journey or unfoldment, right, you'll look for a replacement, right? So, you know, just like people in the material world in their material relationships, especially male and female, if no maturation comes in the nature of that relationship towards an unconditional platform, right, because it can never be unconditional, but towards an unconditional platform, right, in which God is the center, Krishna is the center, then gradually attraction wanes, and you start to look elsewhere, right? And we see this all the time, that people say, well, I no longer was resonating with that relationship, and it came to an end, and it doesn't stop them from pursuing another relationship, right? So part of the factors in these things is self-examination and examination of the nature of what it is we're doing as a whole. Like if we're practicing Bhakti, a complete examination, well, where am I in the process? How does it work? And if we're not clear on those things, we'll just kind of give up. That I didn't really get a taste in Bhakti, right? Somehow or another, and resonance is just a synonym for that. That I didn't resonate means I didn't really get a taste in Bhakti. And therefore, though I don't have not an appreciation for Bhakti, but I just didn't get the taste I was looking for. So we start to turn our attention towards other things, right? So hopefully this, in general, kind of dealt with the subject. There's no way to, really encapsulate whatever it is with this particular individual. Again, I wouldn't do that anyway because I don't know that person, and there may be so many factors involved in whatever decisions they make in their particular stage of life. I'd be happy to know the person, but as of this point I don't. So I can only speak to things related to Bhakti in general and the need to maintain the things that develop taste in Bhakti. Sri Rupa Goswami is told in Upadeshamrita, Utsahan Nishchaya Dharyat, enthusiasm, patience, and confidence. So Utsahan means enthusiasm, but Utsahan means a rising of connection with something that gives, like a utsav. Utsav means a festival. So something that almost brings about a joy in the heart. And that joy is taste, a joy in the heart. And then that joy is what allows you to have nishta. Utsahan nishchayat. Nishchayat means the same thing as nishta, a steadiness in the practice. Because you're actually tasting something, you can have a steadiness in the practice. That steadiness in the practice with taste allows patience to be there. Dharyat means patience. But we'll lose patience if we don't have taste. So taste is the essence of everything in the practice of Bhakti. Beginning with taste in Harinam. Beginning with taste in Harikatha. Because if you have no Harikatha, then very quickly you lose taste in Harinam. Because Harinam is Radha Krishna themselves, and you have no experience with them. So Harikatha, coming through the potency of sadhus, is what gives taste to Harinam. And then the taste in Harinam and Harikatha gives taste to remembrance, means absorption. Because Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam. Smaran really means absorption. Right? This is the real meaning. So when you hear Harikatha and you're chanting Harinam and repeating Harikatha, then Smaran or absorption in Bhagavan becomes possible. In the reciprocal relationship with Bhagavan, Pada Sevan arise, the desire to serve, right? And then in serving, so many moods come in the heart. This leads to Archanam and Vandanam, right? It means serving and expressing the affection of that service in prayer. And then gradually realization of your actual swarup, meaning your dasatva, the nature of being the servant of Krishna, and realizing that, especially in Raganuga Bhakti, in the mood of Visrambha or intimacy. This is the meaning of Sakyam here. And then Atmanivedana means having realized your swarup and offered that swarup in the divine service of Shri Shri Radha Krishna. You understand? So everything has to do with taste. And if there is no taste, either because you're in a situation that's not producing taste for you, and it could be a combination of your own activities in conjunction with the lack of production of taste coming from whomever you're associated with, or it could be that in spite of being in a situation where taste is made available, self-interest predominates and obfuscates the ability to really grasp that taste. And therefore, your previous, material samskars and karmic samskars offer you alternatives because now you're seeking out your taste prominently. So when you do that, then the subtle body, which is composed of the false ego, mind, and intelligence, they cooperatively work together to fulfill that. That's exactly what the Ahamkara, the mind and intelligence do. They're meant to work within the context of avidya, means spiritual ignorance, to provide a sense of material engagement. So they will offer you alternatives according to various kinds of ahamkara that you have. Ahamkara means a self-conception. So abhiman is also a synonym of ahamkara. So I have the self-conception that I'm not going to identify with being a Krishna bhakta. I'll identify with being in this modality or that faith process or this faith process. So in that way, it becomes the intellect, the intelligence, and the mind's function to then do rag and dvesh. These are two features of avidya. Place those things which are not feeding your self-abhiman, your self-conception, and try to find and accept those things which do feed it. Right? Whereas in the process of bhakti, the whole idea is the shrinking of the tendency of ahamkar and abhiman and producing the reality of the dasitva towards Bhagavan, which has no self-interest but only has the interest of the service of Bhagavan. Now, obviously, it is an axiomatic byproduct or automatic byproduct of that mood that one becomes completely satisfied. Right? In that verse, Savai Sam Parodhamo, Bhakti Yoga Hoksajaya Hoitikiya Pratyata, Yenatma Suprasidati. So Suprasidati means one becomes completely happy by the process of unmotivated and uninterrupted bhakti or pure bhakti. So it's not like we do these things and no happiness for us is in store. No, absolute happiness is in store. But there is no desire for that happiness. Rather, the desire is the pleasure of Bhagavan, and it's just the concomitant reality that bliss exists in that relationship. Right? All right, so I will end this here. I don't know how much I was able to satisfy the question that was asked. And again, because the question is really about someone. So I'm dealing just with the general principle. I'm not dealing with that individual. So hopefully you can garner something from the general idea of what it takes to have a taste in pure bhakti and why someone may lose that taste and therefore, quote, lose resonance with bhakti and decide to look or search out another modality or another process or do some mixture, whether it's Gyan Misra Bhakti or Karma Misra Bhakti, right? Instead of Swarup Siddhi Bhakti, they may do something else but still have some contingent of bhakti present. All right, my Dandavat Pranam devotees. Vancha Kalpaturabhyascha Kripa Sindhuvaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Radhe Radhe.